Hey everyone, and welcome to 121 in Flux. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we talk about movies on this show. Older movies, this is not our new movie show. We have 1.21 gigawatts where we do new cinema releases, that kind of thing. Well, not necessarily cinema, obviously VOD stuff and things, direct to video, stuff like that. New stuff. Stuff that's fresh. This is our show where we go back to the past and we talk about movies that are either classics, hidden gems, or in some cases just goofy B movies that we want to watch. And sometimes we're revisiting stuff, sometimes we're watching it for the first time. And this is a mix, this one, because I've seen this movie before. Connor has not seen this movie before. We are going to be talking about Orson Welles' A Touch of Evil from 1958. And this one is obviously a classic, it's very well known.
Yeah.
And and also full disclosure, we watched the reconstructed version, the
Yes.
superior cut. I have never actually seen the theatrical cut myself, mainly because everything I've heard about it makes me not want to.
Maybe one day as an experiment, we'll go
Yeah,
and watch that.
yeah. But so we watched the other cut, the newer cut, and yeah, we're going to talk about it. I guess we start spoiler free for a little bit. Give some general thoughts, and
Yeah,
then
can do.
give a warning before we go into the real plot details. Yeah, I think why not? So I guess first questions first. Connor, did you
Yes,
enjoy Touch of Evil?
very much. I thought it was excellent.
Good.
That
This
is the right answer, I
this
assume.
this conversation will flow much better then because it could have been
Uh,
very
there is
confrontational.
always a concern when one person has seen something, and it's like, will they enjoy this or not?
Uh, yeah, no, I like it a lot as well. I think first and foremost, I think the direction. Oh no, obviously Orson Welles is both the director and he's in the movie. He plays
Yeah.
Quinlan, the corrupt detective captain, police captain, who is the sort of the villain of the movie. And he gives a great performance actually as well.
Yeah.
On top of that, but his direction, the camera work, the way the scenes are paced, and the way they flow is the
It's
star of this movie.
it's there right from the opening. That like 3-ish minutes just on the street at the
The oneer,
start.
yeah,
Yeah.
one giant take. Now, I don't want to set this in stone because admittedly it's been a long time since I've heard anything about it. But the one thing I do remember about the theatrical cut, that is the specific. Obviously, I think it's a good bit shorter, so obviously lots of stuff was taken out. But the one specific thing that I think I remember correctly is that opening oneer is not a oneer in the theatrical cut. It's cut up.
All right, okay. See, I know I had a lecture on some of the stuff in this couple of years back, and they never mentioned there wasn't one, but they did say the credits, instead of being at the end, as where in the time period,
Mm.
they were traditionally at the start, they were superimposed over the top of that.
Right, okay.
So you weren't
I
actually
get.
entirely paying attention to the
It's been a
scene.
while, so I could be misremembering that fact. I don't want to point that out.
Yeah,
I'm going on memory, but I think it's quite clear that if not that shot, certainly stuff like that went on because there's a message at the start of the print. It's like
yeah,
a message from Orson, or not from Orson Welles, but it has a quote of Orson Welles. He wrote a message to the studio at the time because they forced him to shoot more stuff and they re-edited it all into what they wanted, and that's why we have this reconstructed version. It was after the time of his death. Uh, Film historians or whoever put this together based on what the original version was supposed to be, based on his notes. But
yeah. They said it was a 58-page memo that he sent them.
yeah, and you've upset your director when he sends you a 58-page memo.
That's I'm not sure that's classed as a memo anymore.
It's basically a novel at that point.
It is. It's at least a short story.
uh, but no, so and I think the quote I don't have it in front of me, but the quote was something like, "Reconsider because this is a moving sort of the flow of visuals is a big part of this movie, and it's seemingly the theatrical cut ruined that. It took
Yeah.
away that flow, the pacing, the way it was shot, and the way they all interconnected. And I think that really it's shocking to me that it was like that for a long time because that is the star of this film. There's
Yeah,
other
you
good stuff
can't
about it,
imagine it any other way, can you?
but it is gorgeous. It is gorgeous. There's so much like every time you see Quinlan, I don't. There's maybe like one or two shots in the entire movie where he's not shot at a really low angle, so he looks imposing. He looks mean. He looks big. He's taking up the frame.
He's always wearing the hat, which is, like adds a little bit extra on the top.
Yeah, and he's just domineering. It's like the character himself who comes in and just he talks over people. That's something that happens a lot in this movie. Is people are trying to dispute with him, and he talks right over the top of them.
And he's a big dude as well. Like, there's a lot of prosthetics going on.
Yeah, I don't know. Orson Welles might have been put on a few pounds by this point in his life.
Well, maybe. I thought it was a bit later than that.
Yeah, but he is big. They probably are making him look bigger than he actually is because he's. Yeah. But he's just great. But like everything, and the other thing they do with this as well is whenever they're indoors, this is something I was noticing a lot in this viewing. Is not only are they shooting a lot of the stuff at low angles, and not just with him. Some of the other villainous characters also get a lot of low angles, but him especially, and he fills the frame more than any. But I was also noticing whenever they're indoors, and this was creating a really unique mood to this movie. And this is something you don't see a lot of in movies, actually, is they were all lit from the bottom.
Yeah.
And indoors, it was kind of like, there's no like house lights on, and by house lights, that's just a common term used for... obviously, if you're in a house, it's literally the house lights that are on the ceiling, but even in like a studio, you refer to as the main lights that light things as the house lights. And you usually turn them off if you're filming, kind of thing. But in this case, I'm using it to mean lights from above. You're emanating the fact that in most cases, in real life, most light comes from the top.
Yes.
Right, in most cases. But of course...
It's genuinely what you're used to seeing.
Yeah, but obviously you also have lamps and stuff on desks, and sometimes if you've got a moodier lighting, your light's more lower down. And this movie uses that a lot, where you see the shadows on the walls behind them going up the way, and you very rarely see that in movies. They tend to avoid it. But here it's used as a style. It's very consistent throughout. You get this whenever they're indoors. You get these big imposing shadows, and it's especially works well with Orson Welles because you see the shadow of the hat. It's this, the big shadowy version of him behind him, which just makes him even more imposing.
Yeah, it's just like it adds an extra thing to. He's like you say, he's already big and imposing, but then there's this shadow that's on top of it that makes him even bigger.
Yeah, so it's really great. The visual style throughout. There's a lot of camera movement. There's a lot of, and of course, this is Orson Welles. This is the guy who invented a lot of camera techniques previously. In Citizen Kane and all that kind of time period. But the camera feels like it's constantly flowing. It's constantly like anytime there's people outside moving, it feels like the camera's doing something interesting.
Yeah, like the bit towards the end on the bridge, the camera is just never still.
Yeah, because the Heston's sneaking around down below, they're up top, and the camera's always moving. And we mentioned the opening shot, where it is just this shot. And what I like about that one as well, it's not even just a simple... And this is not to downplay like other good one-ers. Like obviously, like the shot in Old Boy is fantastic, right? The one-shot fight scene. But you could argue, okay, but from a filming perspective, it's really simple because it's just left to right. There's no... Whereas this is something that starts up in a close-up. Specifically, it's the opening shot, so this isn't a spoiler, but it opens in a bomb being set.
Mm.
And then the camera follows the person with the bomb to the car, and then it pulls back up to this big, wide shot, and you see the car go from one street to another, and as it comes down the other street, the camera goes back down into it. It goes out of the couple actually instead, and then the car comes past them, but same difference. Like it goes back down into the action, and then pulls back again. And it's very. I can't imagine the logistics of like setting this shot up.
No, because it's not a small distance either, is it? It's it's quite a while that car moves.
Yeah, because once they get to the street that it pulls into with Heston and his wife and Janet Leigh, who I knew originally from Psycho, so this was like when I watched this for the first time, I was like, I've now seen Janet Leigh in 2 movies. That's nice. But they're walking down the street, and they're walking for a while. They're talking, and they're constantly dodging traffic and stuff. You have that weird kind of Saturday night kind of feel where the town's busy and people are just walking out all over the place kind of feel to it. And it sets up the idea that this is on the border between Mexico and the US, because there's like the crossing guard kind of thing. Yeah, the border patrol checking IDs and stuff. Which I suppose actually kind of leads to the one weird criticism you can give to this movie, is that we do have Charlton Heston playing a Mexican.
Yeah, and obviously that's something that now is just a no.
Yeah, it's just a no. And I mean, I think the one thing, and this doesn't excuse it, but I think the one thing it has going for it is the character isn't in any way a stereotype or a parody, or because I've not seen Breakfast at Tiffany's, but Breakfast at Tiffany's has a character in it who is Asian, and it's played by a white guy, and it's nothing but the worst possible thing you think it is.
Yeah, this if it didn't tell you he was Mexican,
It's
you,
that. It's actually kind of confusing that it's the first when you're watching it because you don't because he mentions that up in his side of the border and you're like, wait, what?
yeah,
There's
and
Charlton
but he doesn't have
Heston.
an accent
Yeah, it
either. He's
doesn't have
not
an
putting an
accent.
accent on, which is kind of throws it off a bit more.
Yeah, yeah. And if they've got him in makeup to make him look more Mexican, it's in black and white, so you can't really
Yeah, you can kind
tell.
of see it a little bit,
Well,
but
yeah, but not by much. It's
yeah,
in black and white. It's
it
not that
is weird at
obvious.
first, like you say, but it's one of those things that's it's of the time, and
Yeah,
it's weird now,
yeah.
obviously.
Obviously, I don't like that they've got Charlton Heston playing a Mexican. It's weird and it's insensitive and it's no, don't. But it's this weird thing. It's like, okay, yes, I would rather if the point of the story is that this character's Mexican, I'd rather him be Mexican, played by a Mexican actor. But it's this weird middle ground now where this movie like is so old where I can't imagine anyone but Charlton Heston being the actor in the movie. It's this weird thing because it's so old.
It is one of those things where, like you say, it's so old. You kind of just have to accept that this is how it was, and kind of just go with it. It's hard to really hold it against it because of that's just how it was at the time. Not that that's okay, but we can't
Yeah.
change that.
No, you can't change it. I think it's kind of the thing where if the rest of the movie was bad, we'd quite happily just let it sink into like for the forgotten realm. But the
Yeah.
problem is the rest of the movie's not bad. The rest of the movie's exceptional.
Exactly.
So it's kind of one of those things where every so often I forget about that, and when I watched it and I thought, oh yeah, he's playing a Mexican. Oh yeah, that's weird.
Yeah.
But that is the one, honestly,
Yeah.
one major complaint.
It is.
I think there's very little else you could fault about it. So he of course is married to an American woman, played by Janet Leigh. They're newlyweds, and she's a big part of the movie as well. And the other sort of backstory that's set up is that he works on the Mexican side of the border as an agent, and he's just had this big narcotics bust. He's put this big guy away, part of the Grande family. And his trial's coming up. So another main character we never see that guy he's put away, but his brother, who's like the last family member, like high ranking, who's around in Mexico, is out to get him. But you can't just kill him, because if he kills him, then it's obvious like a case of retribution for putting him away, and it makes, as he keeps saying throughout the movie, if he dies, my brother's just as good as gone. Like he's incarcerated for life, or he's sent to the chair, whatever.
He's got to be smart about it.
Yeah, which is why he goes around this path of trying to torment his wife and sort of discredit them rather than just outright killing and whatever
Smart.
else. Yeah, I guess. And obviously we have this car bomb that goes off, but it goes off after it crosses the border, which makes it murky because then it's like, well, it's both jurisdictions. It's not just the one, because the crime technically happened in Mexico, but the person died in the US, and we have this thing with the American detective, played by Orson Welles, who's Quinlan, with Charlton Heston's character, Vargas, and it sets them off. And it's funny, I think at the first like 20 minutes, 30 minutes of the movie, I think if you don't know what the plot is of the movie, you're thinking, oh, it's about investigating this bombing, who's behind it, and it's
It
not.
very much seems like they're this antagonistic partnership at first.
Yeah, it's not about that at all. It's about Vargas noticing that Quinlan's a corrupt cop and is dirty and plants evidence, and that's what the actual plot of the movie is. It's about their back and forth, and it's about them, and the other players are there to sort of aid that plot. And but it's actually a very well told story.
Oh, it is absolutely.
Very suspenseful. I think even from the sort of the younger guy in the Grande family, the guy in the leather jacket, Mexican Elvis, as I was sort of thinking to myself every time I seen him. Like right from the get go, when he comes on the screen, he feels intimidating, and he's out to do something bad.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just so obvious the whole time. Like it's not subtle in that, even though it's clever in how it shows it you, but it's not subtle in what it's telling you.
It's kind of a masterclass in that way, the movie, in terms of like, it's not subtle, but it's obvious because it's been really well told.
Yeah.
Like everything about the way the camera is, the way the lighting is, the way the demeanors on the characters' faces, everything about it is telling you pieces of information.
Yeah, it's obviously sometimes being unsubtle is a criticism because they're just being obvious. But in here, it's not that they're just telling you information and going, "Oh, this is why it's unsubtle." Well, it's showing you in such clever ways.
I think that's important. It's not just telling you. In fact, very rarely does it just tell you something.
If ever, yeah.
Yeah, it shows you things. It shows you. because obviously the way Vargas finds out that he's planted evidence is because we already seen him knock over the box that then he claimed the evidence was in. Like, and we know as soon as he comes in and he says, "Oh, it was in this box," he's like, and we know, same as him, that's been planted. That was not there before, and it puts us in the same boat as our main character Vargas, which is really smart. It makes us connect to him because we both know the same information.
Yeah.
So no, really, really good, really suspenseful. Yeah, but without talking a bit more plot, I think that's
I noticed there was virtually no score whatsoever. Almost all of it, if not all of it, was entirely music that was within the scene.
Yeah, you're right. I think, but it gets used very effectively.
Yeah, which it also means there's long moments of just silence because there's nothing playing anywhere.
I can appreciate that. Like, see if a director can withhold my attention without music. It's something a lot of European movies still do, is where they'll have almost no score.
Yeah.
And it's very impressive if they can keep it engaging without. If you can make the awkward silence work for you and make it...
Yeah, it is a challenge. You've got to know exactly what you're doing because the music can just cover things up. It's a get out of jail free card almost at times.
Yeah.
If you're not good enough.
But obviously we're talking about Orson Welles here, so...
Yeah, exactly.
He knows what he's doing. Even if the studio didn't agree with that sentiment. Oh dear. But yeah, so it's a very, very dark film. The title is earned. Like, there is real evil that goes on in this movie. It's, Quinlan's character does become proper sadistic in his actions. But at the same time, it isn't just completely black and white either. There is some shades of grey in there. It gives you something to chew on just a little bit as well.
It's like I say, he is essentially evil by the end, but he's still a person. He's never a caricature of just the villain. He's still got a personality and a character to him.
Yeah, well, I think we need to go in the spoiler wall now, just so we can get into things. So full spoilers from this point on for Touch of Evil. So... yeah, I think his character is really... because obviously he is super evil. I think at the point when you realise that it's when he turns around, it's when he's accused of planting the evidence, right? And Vargas tries to tell the other Americans, and they're like... one of them is, but most of them, including his partner, are not having it. Like, no, he would never do this. You're talking out your ass. This is nonsense. But he's like, I know what I saw. I did this. I'm not lying to you. I've got... some cops...
look at all these files.
Yeah, take bribes. Some cops plant evidence, even if they think they're doing it for the right reasons. Because they point out that the Quinlan's put a lot of people away in the past, and all this evidence, which it looks like he always does the same thing. It looks like he always plants it himself, and then lets his partner, who's not in the fact that it's planted, find it.
Yeah,
making it feel more real. Yeah, which also makes his partner very loyal to him.
Yeah, because he doesn't realise.
Yeah, he's willing to defend him, but it's like, yeah, well, think about it. You're always the one who finds it. There might be a reason for that. But, like... So you set up this whole idea, but there's this neat little twist at the end, because he's planting this crime, this bombing on this guy, Sanchez, and he plants this evidence, and throughout the movie, we almost forget that's going on. We see a couple of scenes where they mention they're interrogating him back at the police station, but that's about it. We don't really... At the end of the movie, after they catch Quinlan, and they get him on tape, admitting to wrongdoing, and they catch him, and the whole showdown goes down, we hear that, that guy did eventually admit, by the way. He was guilty.
Yeah.
And I really like that twist, that little wrench in there. It says, okay, obviously what he was doing was wrong. He was being downright evil. He was trying to set up Vargas and his wife as drug addicts. He was trying to plant evidence. He was trying to pin a murder on them. He was going to some evil lengths to, like, not be caught. So he is evil. Hence the title, A Touch of Evil. But he was still good at his job, oddly.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know if it's him that says it or his partner that says it. Like everyone who goes away from this, that he's manipulated the evidence, they all did deserve to be, put away. They were all essentially like that. They were the bad people. That even if they weren't necessarily going away for the exact thing that they caught on.
I think the word you're looking for, Connor, is guilty.
Well, but that's the thing. They're not necessarily guilty of this particular crime. But they are deserving of the punishment regardless.
Well, to be fair, it did sound like most of the times it was the particular crime. It sounded like he was planting the evidence that said, no, you did this thing.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I think I think it's just an interesting little wrench because obviously he's still the villain. I don't think it gives you sympathy for him by any means. I think
No, it just
it just adds a little bit of depth that says he was actually still right. He was still he's a cop who he was as the character says, he was a good detective but a terrible cop.
yeah.
And that's kind of like had someone else been like supervising him and not let him go unchecked, maybe he could have been an ally to, because he could have sniffed things out and then let someone who actually plays by the rules do the actual
Find the actual work. Yeah.
do the actual work. But I like that twist on it. There's that somewhere along the way there was a good detective in there, and they mentioned that he's not been the same since his wife died and his wife got strangled. And he's like, okay, maybe he wasn't as bad before then. Maybe that's what set him down this path of evil. Like there was.
Yeah, I like the idea because it keeps talking about how his wife was strangled and there wasn't the evidence and proof of things like this because there just wasn't that around at the time. So it's like, well, after that, he knows these people are deserving of going away, but what can he do?
So he makes sure there's proof.
Exactly.
Every time.
It really always comes back to that for him with the strangulation, and obviously that comes up a few times.
Yeah, but of course it's not right either, and the other characters point that out, and you've got Vargas who's doing this by the book, but I think it's almost an interesting contrast that he is just married, he still has his wife. It's a big, obviously she's on jeopardy a lot of the time in this movie, like they target her because of him, and I think that's the ultimate like corruption of Quinlan, like his character, like where he really becomes evil because he's essentially he's going after this man's wife is what happened to him. Like it's almost like it's almost like why he finally goes on that binge again, because they mentioned that he used to drink. He was an alcoholic, but he's been off it for a while. He's been eating the candy bars as they keep bringing up. But he does go on that bender again, and at the end he is a complete wreck. He's completely drunk, and
there's that moment I really like where the guy comes in and says, "Oh, we'll get you something to drink." He's like, "I don't drink," and then he looks down and realizes that he's already drinking. Yeah, he kind of pauses mid sentence and realizes like he hasn't even noticed.
Yeah, no, it's really good. But no, I like that. I like that his character has this much you can read into, and you can, if you want him to just be like a two-dimensional villain, I think the movie still works like that. If you want to think about it, you just want to enjoy it for the suspense and the camera work, I think it works like that.
Yeah, sure.
But I think if you're looking for a bit more there's themes in there. There's things about his character that make him a lot more interesting.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that make it more interesting a film for me. Like obviously, like you say, it's suspenseful, it's gorgeous. Those alone are enough. But then you have these interesting characters that are more than just caricatures of the stereotypes that they usually are in these sorts of films that makes it, stand out.
Yeah, even Janet Leigh, who is kind of the damsel for to a large extent, even she's shown to be quite sort of strong. Like she argues, she goes with Grandy at the start, and she has that little fighting match with him in his shop because he's orchestrated for her to come there and sets up their plot. But she kind of tries to put up a little fight, and she's got a little bit more going for her. I mean, she is ultimately still the damsel for the main plot.
Yeah,
but Janet Leigh's good in the role at least. Like we have good actors kind of spread.
Yeah, exactly.
And obviously Orson Welles does kind of steal the show because he is such a. His performance is really lyric because, like I said, he talks over people. Whenever someone says anything that he disagrees with, he like just talks over them. He brute forces them out. He's like this intimidating, like taking up the entire screen personality where he shuts everyone else down.
Yeah, it's also something I found really interesting. Like you say, he is this big, imposing guy. He's always commands a scene, but he has a limp, which is almost like a weakness, almost. Which I think is really interesting because it's like you just see him walk and he's not keeping up with everyone else. He's limping, and it's like but he's still, even with that, he's still towering over everyone and commanding them.
Which is actually how we flip the partner. We set this idea up that he sometimes forgets his cane. He leaves it by.
Yeah.
And he does that at the murder scene. Like he kills Grandy to set up the wife, to set up Janet Leigh's character, and he leaves it by, and it's the partner actually flips because the partner is an honest cop, and when he learns that maybe he is guilty of these things, maybe he is one step too far over that line.
Yeah.
And he helps. I mean, he ends up paying for it, but he helps Heston. He sets up the final sequence of the movie.
Yeah.
Which is this bugging sequence where Heston has to stay in range with this. This is, of course, where the technology feels really dated.
Yeah.
But he's got this giant radio thing, and he's trying to like follow, and he has to like. And I love this. They're at like this oil pumps sort of area, and Heston's like ducking and diving under the bars. And
the bit where it looks at the oil pump is one of my favorite bits because it looks up at the oil pump and it follows it up and down with the camera. And normally it'd just do that once, but it does it like 3, maybe 4 times, just up and down, up and down. Nothing else is going on. You're just following this oil pump for a minute, and it really just shows you this. It takes its time to just set the scene.
Yeah.
And again, it's the camera just moving. It could just stay still and watch the oil pump, but no, it moves with it.
Yeah, no, it's moments like that make this movie. It's those little details in the camera work that just put it above and beyond. But no, it's almost like I always feel like the movie's given me all I need at this point, but it gives me this one last final sort of chase sequence, if you will, where Heston has to keep up with them to keep the recording. And he's ducking and diving, he's getting in the water, and then there's that moment where he's under the bridge and it's like causing an echo because it's playing out loud, and and Quinlan's hearing himself back, and he sort of pieces things together. Yeah,
you can see for a minute questioning if it's just an echo, and then he's like, nah, he's too smart for that.
And he's like, you look nervous. Why are you looking nervous? Yeah. But no, it's a fantastic film. It
is.
Imagine cutting out like however long I'm not actually going to check. You answer the question while I check exactly how much of a time difference there is.
It is hard to imagine anything being cut out, really, or what you change, because so much of it is just flows so naturally. And I mean, that is the flow of it. It's the camera, it never stops. And where do you edit this that stops it feeling jumpy, even before you take out any actual character or plot or whatever like that? Just the actual flow of the camera.
15 minutes is the answer.
15 minutes, and it's less than 2 hours anyway.
Yeah, it's 111.
Right, so it's a fair chunk.
Yeah, no, it is. And I think the pacing and the flow, as we've mentioned, is a big part of this movie. So
yeah,
you interrupt that, you take things out, and
it's crazy to imagine it any other way.
Else. Yeah, it's baffling, but I'm glad I saw this first. I'm glad I was born at a time by the time I was watching classic movies, this already happened.
Available to you in this format, yeah.
Because if you'd watched this before 1998, you were stuck with the theatrical cut.
Right, pretty much.
The original version, which would suck for you.
Yeah. But what can you do?
So some other scenes I want to point out, because I love that how sometimes this will just like have a scene and the scene will last for quite a long time. There's like I don't know, like 5 scenes in this movie that take up a lot of screen time.
Yeah.
One of them is the sort of setup of the wife and the murder, which is one of the times we mentioned how the music in the scene was used, and there's like Congo drums going on outside the building, but as the murder's happening, the Congo drums are getting louder and louder.
Yeah, it's really effective.
Yeah. Neat little touch there. Obviously, the opening's a nice big long scene. The scene, it's kind of split up because Heston leaves the house to go make a phone call, but the scene where the planting of the evidence happens.
Yeah.
And even before we get to the planting of the evidence, there's this weird divide where the authority between the two characters is challenging each other, because we're on American soil. It's Quinlan's game, as it were. But this Sanchez guy is obviously Mexican. He's speaking Spanish. Heston speaks Spanish back to him. And Quinlan gets pissed off about this. No, speak English.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Is it up to this point? This is before you really know what the movie is, and it kind of still feels like this antagonistic partnership at this point still. And this is the scene that really kind of solidifies that just before it subverts it.
Yeah. Yeah, and you, also I think before this point you don't realise that the wife's in trouble again yet. You figure she probably will be, because we're still keeping track of her.
We're not seeing anything.
Yeah. It's not until that great moment where she phones the desk at the motel, and she talks on the phone for a bit, and then she hangs up, and then we cut to who's on the phone. And it's Mexican Elvis.
Yeah,
and he's like super intimidating.
Yeah, no, that is good, because obviously she's just like, hey, I just don't let anyone bother me, and he's like, yeah, sure. And then you cut to it, and then you have all his friends there later, the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
It really works.
Yeah, actually, well, another thing about Quinlan I want to point out his character. I loved it when he was accused of this. Like, when he got into the hotel room and he's with Heston's there, the Americans are there, and he's accused of this. He storms out. He's angry. He's been accused of it, even though he knows he's done it.
Yeah, he plays the role perfectly, doesn't it?
It was very not quite the same. But have you ever seen A Few Good Men?
No.
It reminded me a little bit. I mean, Jack Nicholson in that wasn't quite like this, but he was accused of something and he's like claimed he wasn't doing it, but he was proud of doing it. When eventually, you can't handle the truth. That's the moment where he admits that he did it.
Yeah.
Right? Not to spoil A Few Good Men, but it's a pretty famous movie scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like it kind of gave me shades of that, where he's like he's proper offended he's been accused of this, even though he knows he's done it.
Yeah, but it's the idea that it is almost the pride where he's like, he knows he's done it for the right reasons, and he knows that, well, in his mind at least, he's done it for the right reasons, and he's done it to put the guilty away, and he's like, nah, I'm not taking this. I've done my job. It is the way he takes it, maybe.
Yeah. Even to the point, the other people around him respect him so much, they almost ask Heston to apologise. And he's like, "What, do you want me to get down on my knees and apologise? Would that be good for you?" And he's like, "If you had any good mind, you would." That's how much they're willing to go along with him. That's how much they respect him, and it just does. It's a great film. I can't compliment it enough, and also it bears repeating. It is gorgeous.
It is.
I had to pause it a couple of times to, I don't know, pee. I think once, get a snack, the second, whatever. I had to pause it, and each time I paused it, I was like, I could make that a wallpaper. Both times I was like, I could put that on a wall. I could frame that.
I also had to pause it once to go to the toilet, and I kind of felt guilty for pausing it. It's like I've just interrupted this flow of this wherever it was. Even obviously you wait till the end of a scene, but even then it's just like I feel guilty for pausing it where I am.
I feel like not a lot of people do that. I feel like we are maybe unique in that we do wait. If we're going to pause something to go to the toilet or something, we wait till the end of a scene. Yeah, we wait for a cut.
Yeah, maybe we are odd in that sense.
We're a little bit pernickety in that sense, but
it feels like I'm insulting the flow of the movie just by pausing it for that. Whereas normally I don't feel guilty about pausing it. If I need to go to the toilet, I'm gonna pause it.
No, that's one of the perks of watching a movie at home. But,
exactly.
Anything else you want to
add? No, like I say, I really like all the themes it plays with. The idea of who is guilty, and what is it that justifies these things, and it kind of questions, was Quinlan right to do what he did? Was he justified? Like, because obviously all these characters, they have such a respect for him and what he does. It's like, was he right?
It's becoming a bit of a joke to compare the movies that I'm talking about to Batman, but I'm going to go here, right? Batman doesn't kill, and Batman doesn't kill because it says even if one is justifiable to an extent, and you cross that line, it makes the next time easier.
Yeah.
Right? I think what's happened here with Quinlan is that he did it because he believed it was right one time, and then it became a thing.
And then he realised it worked.
Yeah, and it became easy, and he just kept doing it. And then he gets so consumed with like protecting himself that he started plotting to set up this married couple as drug addicts and murderers to keep his own reputation, to keep all that intact.
Yeah.
And it's just it's gone down that path of evil. It's been tempted. It's the easy way out. Even if it's for the right reasons, the easy way out is kind of evil. It's almost like the devil tempting you.
Yeah, and like I said, because he is kind of in the right for a lot of what he does, in the sense that he's targeting the right people most of the time, but he's just doing it in the wrong way, and that's ultimately what makes him evil.
Yeah, and again, compared to Batman, the reason why Batman isn't evil, right, is not just because he doesn't cross that line. I mean, obviously people say, "Oh, he's not a cop; he's a vigilante." Sure, he's working outside the law. But that's why he has an even stricter set of rules than the police do. He holds himself to a higher standard, because if he doesn't, then that's what makes it wrong. And I'm not saying that in real life people should go out and be Batman. That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about movie characters here. But you know what I mean? Like that's what I'm getting at. Whereas Quinlan's having his cake and eating it too.
Yeah, he kind of, once he's crossed that line, he realizes I can do what I want. Yeah, and he just does what he has to protect himself then at that point.
He thinks he's judge, jury, and executioner, and any attempt to supersede that he sees as an attack on him, and he has to defend himself. And it's a great character study.
It really is.
So, no, it's riveting stuff, and I think we're left with ratings, and I feel like, what sort of number are you giving this out of 10?
I'm thinking a 9. Stuff like Charlton Heston playing a Mexican. That's just kind of drags it down a little bit, colors it just a little bit too much.
I agree. That is the one negative point. I gave it a 9 originally. I think I'm going to stick with a 9. I was almost like the filmmaking when I was watching it this time was so good. I was like, oh, did I bump it to 9.5? Am I going that? And I'm like, nah. Heston's playing a Mexican. That docks a point. It just does.
It does dock a point.
It docks a goddamn point.
Which is a shame because if that wasn't the case, man, this could easily be a 10.
Yeah. No, it's the filmmaking and everything else about it has it up there. It's just that one sore point has to just drag it down that one point. Yeah. But there you go. So Touch of Evil, 9s all round. So by all means, if you've not seen Touch of Evil, do it. Watch it. It's fantastic. It's a classic for a reason. Just make sure you watch the restored cut, the 1998 cut. You have an option as well. Most of the versions come with both the 185 and the full screen, so widescreen and full screen essentially, because it was filmed to work for both. I believe it was shown in theaters on widescreen, but it was shot with open matte so that they had it framed for both. So different movies did this. I know Terminator 2. This is a very different example, but Terminator 2 did this thing where they framed it for both the TV at the time, because obviously TVs were all 4:3, and they had the two different ratios. So it wasn't
playing
always
it safe.
Yeah, especially with Terminator 2, it wasn't like sometimes you would get more on the sides in the widescreen, but sometimes you actually had more on the top and bottom for the full screen, just depending, because they framed it for both.
Yeah.
Obviously, I prefer the widescreen because it's the cinematic one, but the options there. If you're a purist and you think, I would rather have the open matte 4:3, then you got the option. Most of the discs come with both. So, no. Let us know what you think of Touch of Evil in the comments below. Like and subscribe, all that stuff helps us out a lot. Get us on Twitter at mild_fuzz for channel updates. Individual Twitters, I'm at Wibble89. To hear me ramble on, Connor's at ConnorRyan94 if you want to hear him ramble. I don't recommend it. But thanks for watching, guys. Keep watching movies, and we will see you next time.